we bring in from Logan, Utah, the head football coach at Utah State. And here on the sports page, Summer of Football, Gary Andersen joins us here on the new Sentinel sports page. Hey, Coach Andersen, it's Vince Ferrara and Mike Strange here in Knoxville. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing this morning?
We're doing great, Coach. We enjoyed talking with you and visiting with you last year. And you guys had a 7-6 season a year ago. And you guys have put – it's amazing. I want you to go through this. In looking through, you guys have put in – people may not realize this. You guys have put in quite a few quality players in the NFL. Kind of run through some of the guys that have, even last year, number of guys drafted by the Seahawks and into the NFL. Hit on some of those guys that have gone from Utah State into the NFL.
Yeah, well, we were fortunate. A couple years ago at corner, Curtis Marsh, who's a tremendous player right now, doing a good job. And then this last year we were able to have 3 young men that are currently on rosters, and Robert Turbin, a running back that came out early for us, finished his junior year, had a knee injury his sophomore year, sat out that year, and redshirted, came back and got drafted by the Seahawks. Everything's great with him. Talked to him yesterday. He's excited to start camp, and fortunate for Robert and for Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner was also drafted by the Seahawks, so they're on the same team, and saw Bobby last night also, and he's doing a great job. And so those 2 kids are moving on and ready to start camp. Tremendous players, tremendous leaders, but just quality young men who got their degree, and they're moving on in life to the NFL. And then we had a running back, Michael Smith, who's with Tampa Bay, and things going well for him. So we'll see how those kids do when real football starts. They put on pads here in a couple of days, so we'll see how it goes then. But very proud of all those young men that were with us, and they all got their degrees and ready to take on the next challenge.
Coach, I think the most fascinating story in the last year or so in college football has been the realignment, people jumping conferences. You were sitting there in the WAC, say, a year ago. When you see Texas A&M to the SEC, do you think, oh, no, here we go, dominoes, it's going to get down to Utah State?
Yeah, it was a big concern. And fortunately, we've been able to be stabilized now within the Mountain West. But if you start to see the SEC changing and moving in that direction, and it really is, no matter what anybody says, it's moving towards a superpower, and you just hope you make that cutoff point when you're at Utah State, or if you're in the WAC, or you're Louisiana Tech, or whoever you may be. You hope you make that point to stay in that upper level of football. But we feel now that we're stabilized in the Mountain West Conference after this next season in a quality conference, which is a big sigh of relief, to be real honest with you, for us.
Talk about that process, getting, going into the Mountain West. Who else is coming into the Mountain West? What's the Mountain West going to look like?
Well, I think what you have is, if you look at the WAC 4 or 5 years ago, when I first got here 3 years ago, you look at the WAC, you had Boise, you had Hawaii, you had Nevada, and you had Fresno, who had been the upper tier of the WAC for a number of years, and now they're all in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
So what you have is you have the old top of the WAC, and you're joining ourselves and San Jose are joining the WAC, along with the New Mexico's, the Air Forces, the Wyoming's, Colorado States. So I believe it's a very, very it's a quality conference from top to bottom. I'm very familiar with it because of my time at Utah, obviously. So I think you've got good teams from head to toe. I think it's regionally, it's good for rivalries, for ourselves, and for everybody that's involved. And it's just spaced out the right way, and it's going to be a quality conference. But it was great for us to be part of it, and really it's a credit to our administration. We're building a brand new weight room right now. We just got ourselves in a position to get new turf down. I mean, it goes on and on. We're a Nike Pro Combat team now. Those are the things that open the door, and the credit really goes to our president, President Albrecht, and Mr. Barnes, for giving us the opportunity to have such an attractive place for people to come in and say, yep, we want those guys in our conference.
Visiting with fourth-year head coach at Utah State, Gary Andersen, here on the New Sentinel Sports Page. It's the Sports Page Summer of Football, talking football and getting you ready for the 2012 season. And, Coach, last year, a lot of people really, especially here in the Southeast, really learned even more about Utah State in your game at Auburn. Talk about that game, and I know as coaches you have to move forward into the next week. But did you or any of their kids kind of reflect at all on if you get that game and it doesn't slip away, and how that maybe changes things for you?
Yeah, you sit back and you look at it. It would have been a tremendous victory, the biggest victory in the history of Utah State, and everything that comes with that. There's no question. It was It was the hardest defeat that I've probably ever had as a head coach, and I look back and I see because of the mistakes we made, and I look at myself right square in the mirror and I say, we didn't recover an onside kick, and at the end of the day, that goes right back into my lap because we didn't execute it correctly, and they did, and it was very well executed, all the stuff that comes with it, but we didn't do it. So what I learned from it is I don't want to go through that again. I can promise you that much. And we learned from it as a team. I think there's some positives that came out of it, but it was a huge negative when it happened when we lost the game. And but it did. I cannot tell you the amount of just the ability to get into a door in recruiting that's done to be in the Auburn game, to be close, to be on national television. It's helped us in Florida. It's helped us in Texas. It's helped us in Oklahoma. And, we've been fortunate the last few years to go to Oklahoma and play very well. Didn't quite win, but we played well. Texas A&M, the same thing. So those games, when we go back and play, we play well. It gives us an opportunity, but we'd sure like to win one and see what that does for us. I'll tell you that much.
Coach, everybody loves rivalry games. Here we've got Auburn, Alabama, Georgia Tech, Utah State. And I ask you this because you've been on both sides of that. You were at Utah for a while. Now you're at Utah State. Set the scene. What's that game like in the state of Utah?
Well, it's really kind of flip-flop, and that was one of the major goals that we set as a staff and as a football team walked in here to create in-state rivalries again with BYU and with Utah, and it hadn't been that way. It had been very lopsided, one-sided. For probably a decade, and now our ability to be able to beat BYU 2 years ago on national television, flop that thing right back. BYU beat us last year on the last play of the game. We played Utah our first year here, didn't play the second, and now we're going to turn around and play again, and so on our fourth year. So the opportunity to, now it's a rivalry, is a great thing for us, and we're trying to hang on to those rivalries and keep playing those games, which gets more difficult every single year. But the setting will be, it'll be at our place this year. It's on national television, ESPN. We're going to have, 30,000, 40,000 people in our stadium, and then we're excited about the opportunity to get those people here in our stadium. It's not going to be 80 or 90 like it is in the SEC in a lot of different places, but it'll be a packed house and a bunch of rabid fans with an unbelievable student body cheering on the Aggies on that day.
Visiting with Utah State head coach Gary Andersen in our Sports Page Summer of Football, Vince Ferrara and Mike Strange. Coach, you had some key losses, guys that went on to the NFL, as you mentioned earlier. You still have some pretty good players on your team, too, and probably one of the league favorites this year. Kind of take us through each unit, the offense, the defense, and your special teams. Give us some summary, some things that stand out that are important for our listeners to know.
Well, it starts at the quarterback position for us. We have two young men that played. Chucky Keaton last year, a young man from Texas, walked in as a true freshman at Auburn, played our first 5 games and played well. Got hurt in the Hawaii game, and Adam Kennedy came in and played the rest of the way. And obviously we won 5 of our last 6 football games, so Adam played well. So anytime you start as a solid position as a quarterback, I think we feel pretty good about that. So that's a positive. The running back scenario with 2 NFL draft picks, Kerwin Williams has got to come in and be the guy. And from there, 2 weeks from now, I think I'll have a lot better idea to tell you who's going to be the next guy up there. But right now we have Kerwin, and we have a lot of guys that, potential. And we all know that means they haven't done anything yet. So we'll see in a couple of weeks what happens with them. I like the offensive line. It's young. It's aggressive. It's athletic. A couple kids are untested in that position also, so I feel good about those kids, but a little bit unproven there. I really like our 2 tight ends. DJ Tialavea and Kellen Bartlett are 2 quality tight ends, I believe, in a lot of programs in the country, and they'll be highlighted within our offense. And our wide receiver core is young, athletic, and tall. We have three wide receivers are over 6'4", so hopefully they can go up and get the football. On defense, our defensive line is a question mark. That's my world forever and ever, and it kind of hurts me to say that at this point, but that is a big question mark for us, is how our D-line is going to step up to the challenge. I feel good about them one day, and then the next day I don't feel so good about them as we went through spring football. So that's hopefully those young men have done what they're supposed to do in the summer, and they'll step up and be ready. Replacing Bobby Wagner as an inside linebacker, led the WAC for 3 years in tackles, the NFL draft pick, all the stuff that comes with it. He's going to fall in the shoes of Tavares McMillan, sophomore from Florida, had a great spring. Excited about watching him. And then Kyle Gallagher has to be replaced also, who was a 3-year starter for us, and that'll be by Jake Dowdy. So 2 new inside linebackers, very talented young men, but unproven players also. Very solid in the secondary. I like Nevin Lawson. He's going to be a junior from Florida. He's a very good player, and Jamani Robertson is our other corner. So I think we'll be solid in the back end. But you got to start it up front, and that's the big question marks as we go through. I would say running back number 1 and defensive line number 2 as we go through camp.
Coach, I want to shift gears here on you. what's happened with the announcement yesterday, the penalties at Penn State? Just as a football coach, the head of a program, and you look at what Coach O'Brien's facing at Penn State now, just what's your perspective on that when you see a program that's got to deal with what they've got to deal with now?
Well, it's absolutely a tremendous challenge. I just briefly saw last night his comments, and very respectable in my opinion as far as, you got to try to rally the troops. You got to try to gather those kids around each other and fight for what you got to fight. And I think there's a lot of learning that's going to take place over the next month or so for the kids and the coaches in that situation as far as, what direction are we headed and who's going to stay with us and who's jumping ship and all the stuff that comes with it. But it's going to start from the top, and he's got to do his best to support the young men. There's young men that are making very difficult decisions in that point, and am I going to stay here at Penn State where I probably wanted to play since I was 2 or 3 years old or whatever the situation is, or am I going to turn around and transfer and go somewhere where I may be able to win a championship? I may be able to go to a bowl game if I'm, a sophomore, a junior, a season, or a senior, and I'm sure those senior kids are trying to rally the troops. A very difficult time, but you know what, in coaching, we all kind of pride ourselves, and we talk about it all the time, of finding a way to be able to deal with adversity, and I believe that my mindset would be to try to take care of the kids first and then worry about myself second at that time frame. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard for those coaches and for those players.
Coach, really appreciate it. Thanks so much. We'll be tracking you this year. As always, great to visit with you. Gracious with your time.
Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate you having us on. Go Aggies.
All right, that is thank you so much, Coach. That is Gary Andersen, the head football coach at Utah State.